I can't do any music at all. And you know, stick me in a studio, I'm useless, can't play an instrument, but I marvel at that record to listen to their creation from nothing.
Well, if you're on Twitter, you're probably following that Eric Alper. I know I am. I've known him for 25 years, but you might not know the man behind the tweets. So we have him as a guest today to find out more about him and his background. I mean, when I met you, you were a music publicist, and you morphed into a music commentator, and now you have a Sirius XM show that I've been lucky enough to be on a few times. How did that transformation happen, do you think? Was it a natural thing that would happen in your life, do you think?
Yeah, I used to, whenever I was bringing guests onto the national show Canada AM, I would just sit and talk to the producers while the artists were on there, just like every other publicist. I was literally I had no desire to do anything other than publicity. I was already living my dream job.
Look, can you do the Beatles' Abbey Road? Yes, I can, as long as I don't have to do like People in Cars or do a new version of Pulp Fiction. Can you do Bob Dylan better than Bob Dylan can? Prove it. Give away some really cool prizes like autographed merchandise or free downloads as well. And just ask them to have some fun with it and post it in the thread as well. For more tips, keep following along here. And we'll talk soon.
This is all I ever wanted to do, and so the producer said to me, hey, do you want to come on in a couple of weeks to talk about the holiday box sets that the record labels are putting out? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I called up all the labels, got all their box sets, and just talked about it for 4 minutes, just like I'm talking about the latest artist news with you or whatever. And that was about, I'm going to say maybe about 10 or 11 years ago or so. And that kind of led to more appearances on the show to this. But I was always very, very aware of the fine line that I had, that I'm not going to criticize anybody ever in music. I'm never going to shy away from the fact that I work in the industry. And I'm never going to shy away from the fact that, like, this isn't really normal. You really never have somebody who might work for a record label or work in a publicity department talk about other people that's not your client. And so when I kept saying yes to people's requests to do interviews whenever somebody passed away.
Well, let's put it this way. I mean, when you're in a band with Keith Richards and Mick Jagger, and you can still be the coolest guy in the band, that's still saying a lot. What he did in the group was very deceptively simple.
They would call me to give 7 minutes worth of memories or why people should know about this artist or maybe some fun fact. And it just kept growing and growing and growing from there. And that led to a bunch of appearances on Sirius XM for about a year and a half. And then one day the producer, the head of talk radio, said, do you want to have your own show? And I'm like, no, why would I have my own show? Like, nobody wants to listen to me talk, like nobody. And so he said, no, just try and do it. So I literally just invited my musician friends to come on, people like, Andy Kim and Miles Goodwin and Leona Boyd and you, and people that I can just shoot the breeze with for 15 minutes and not go inside baseball too much, because I can't. I don't want to know the technical aspects of writing or recording a song. I don't know. You stick me in a studio, I have no idea what to do. I would delete things. I would be awful as a producer or an engineer. So what I'm really curious about is, like, what happened to your mindset when you start to go from 0 to 15 million copies in an instant?
Milestones. When you're thinking about a cause for a celebration that you should be shouting from the rooftops of social media, think small. You don't have to think so big all the time.
That's the stuff that I'm interested in. I'm interested in what happens to the human psyche when there's no rule book, when you start to drop in sales. What's your team like? Who's around you? And hopefully learn something from those experiences that people from all walks of life can kind of learn from it. So it's really taking what's going on in music and people's lives and figuring out, well, how can, what kind of lessons did they learn about all of it? And maybe just maybe just cure our boredom being in a global pandemic, being at home for 15 minutes and check into one another. So that's really how it started. It was really me just saying yes to everything that came my way.
Final question, just who was your biggest get for Sirius? You talked about being tickled about, these musicians responding on Twitter. Who did you get to interview that to date that you were the most excited about?
Jane Stevenson and Jane Stevenson. No, really, I think you have been easily one of the best guests that I've ever had, because I admire people who do what you do. I love the media. I love the fact that you can take something that is on a vinyl piece of slab or ones and zeros and come up with why people should listen to this, because it's things that I admire, working in a area where I'm pitching and telling people you should always listen to this kind of stuff, knowing full well that like everybody can't cover it. So I'm always interested in those decisions. So you're funny, you're insightful, and you don't come from a background of journalism, strictly in music, and I love that. So I'm gonna have to say you. I'm also
I wasn't expecting that.
I think there's people that I bought their albums that I'm still working with, like people like Sash Jordan or Miles Goodwin or Andy, Peter Frampton. The ability to sit down with them for 13 minutes or 15 minutes isn't a lot of time, but I love doing it. I really do. It's especially in the last 18 months where this is really the only form of communication that I have with people other than email. So, the ability to sit down with Kurt from Metallica, or even as big as somebody like that, to somebody who was one of the biggest what ifs in music, to somebody like Pete Best of the pre-Beatles stuff. I love just talking to people about music and what makes them tick.
It shows. On that note,
No.
Eric, thank you so much for talking with us today. For those of you who are watching, we'd love it if you let us know on Facebook and Twitter what you think about what Eric had to say today, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks so much, Eric.
Thanks so much, Jane, for having me. We'll talk soon.